Welcome back to another episode of Curveballs and Lemonade. I'm your host, Judy Kogan. This week's episode is one that I'm super excited about because I'm in studio today with my guest. And if you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify or any other audio, that means nothing. But if you are watching a video or on YouTube, then you can see that my setup looks a little different. I'm coming to you today from Command Creative Studios. And the second reason why I'm super excited is because I have my guest today, Jen Gitlin. Jen is an attorney, she's a mom, she's a sister, she's a daughter, she's a wife, and she's my friend of 33 years. Welcome, Jen.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Of course, I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you here. And just for the listeners, we met in college 33 years ago, and we have stayed friends throughout every season of our lives. We both went to law school at slightly different times, but after law school, we were both living in the same apartment building in Santa Monica, and we met our now husbands. We got married around the same time. We were pregnant for the first time around the same time. And we both had our first sons within like 2 weeks of each other, right?
Yep, 2 weeks.
That was an exciting time. And we're actually here to talk about that first son of yours.
Yes.
Yeah. So Jen's on the podcast today to talk about her son's diagnosis of Crohn's disease. So before we get to that diagnosis, can you talk a little bit about what life was like for him and your family, before you realized something wasn't quite right?
Sure. So my son, Trevor, he's now 15 years old, was diagnosed when he was 10 years old. Before that, he was probably the same way as now, very happy, kind, sweet kid, turning into a sweet young man. Before diagnosis, a lot of energy, very athletic, very just happy and go lucky. And so that's how I remember it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So thinking back to when things first started, when did you first sense that something wasn't quite right? I know that I remember you telling me that he was losing weight, and I remember how fast he was growing at that time, because I think he might have been taller than me when he was 10, which isn't that hard. But what other signs beside the losing weight did you see that made you realize that it might not just be like stomach aches or growing pains, and it might be something more?
So it was an interesting time because it was during COVID. I remember, I think it was back in 2021, when he first, of course, he started losing weight. That was one of the first signs. Never really knew he was having stomach aches. I don't think he even realized that was an issue. He was going to the bathroom a lot. But I think one of the biggest things was he was tired all the time. He would come home after school. He would immediately go to bed and he would sleep until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, wake up, have dinner, and kind of go back to bed. He was even falling asleep at school on the lunch tables at lunch at the playground. And so that was kind of one of our first signs that something wasn't right and that we had to get him in to figure out what was going on.
Okay. So sleepiness is certainly consistent with other types of illnesses or diseases. So, and as I understand, Crohn's symptoms can mimic other illnesses as well. So sort of what were doctors telling you in those like initial stages, or were you even seeking out the assistance of a medical team at that point?
So I had never even heard the word Crohn's. I had heard it, I think, amongst adults having Crohn's disease. I had no idea what it was. That did not cross my mind.
And no family history of it?
No family history, okay. that was even something that he had. I didn't know what was wrong with him. I remember going to our pediatrician, who we are no longer with, at the time. And again, it was during COVID, and I would be reporting his symptoms. And every time we came in, he would come in with a hazmat suit, thinking he had COVID. Wouldn't really kind of get into the nitty-gritty until he took that first test, found out he was negative, and then would start assessing him. And one of the first things they would do was to take the finger prick test to see if he was iron deficient, which he always was. And that was kind of the first things that they were doing. He didn't know what was wrong. He would run labs, tests on him. Everything was coming back kind of normal. But everything, his iron was extremely, extremely low. And he was so pale, so pale. In fact, I can't even look at pictures of that time of him because it's so emotional to look at how he was suffering during that time and nobody knew what was wrong. So that kind of, we kept going to this doctor over the several months, I would say, trying to figure out what had happened, what was going on with him, and getting no answers.
So as a mom, and we're both moms, obviously, there's an instinct, that mom gut feeling that something is wrong. And so how did you sort of balance this like instinct that you knew that you felt that something was wrong with your child, but you weren't getting answers or any sort of concrete certainty about what exactly was going on?
So I remember the doctor saying, he's anemic. And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, why is he anemic? And I remember the doctor responding to me, well, lots of kids are anemic. So that never sat well with me. And I knew he wasn't growing. He was losing weight. Again, he was a big kid. He had always been a big kid, very tall. So it's not as if he was tiny, but I looked up not growing on the internet, and I found that maybe he needed an endocrinologist. And so I just started researching who kind of was the top endocrinologists in LA County. And I found this amazing doctor through UCLA. Took 6 weeks to get in with him. He was a pediatric endocrinologist. And we just kind of waited for that appointment to happen. And when we finally met him, he asked all the questions that our primary pediatrician was not asking. And within 5 minutes, he said, I'm not your guy, but I think you need to see a gastroenterologist. And I couldn't understand why. Again, I wasn't putting two and two together that it was his stomach, but he wasn't absorbing nutrients in his stomach. And he got us in with our first GI, amazing woman, Dr. Pathak at UCLA, the very next day. And within the next 2 days, we had some early tests that something wasn't right in his gut.
Okay. Before we get into that, I just have a couple of questions about sort of like the pre-diagnosis piece of it. What was the hardest part of the pre-diagnosis, part of not knowing? Here you know that there are some labs that are not right. He's not, he has these symptoms. He's not, he's not acting like he was, at least before. He's tired all the time. Like, what was the hardest part of like knowing something was wrong, but not knowing what it was?
Oh, it was awful. Your mind goes to the kind of the worst places, when it's your child. And so I had no idea that it could be what was ultimately discovered to be Crohn's. And I can explain what that is later. But no, I was searching for answers and not knowing and researching and wondering. And so I was just to have an appointment with a specialist beyond our pediatrician felt at least somewhat hopeful. I know we were awaiting that appointment with hope that maybe they could direct us in the right direction because I felt hopeless in our current healthcare situation. And we did get that with meeting with that first doctor, but it was a very difficult time, very emotionally taxing as a family, for my son, Trevor, because he was still dealing with all of the symptoms at the same time of having to figure out how to navigate school, life, everything. I remember him being in flag football at the time and just standing out on the field and then crouching down in pain with holding his stomach and still having no answers at that time.
Yeah. Before we get to that GI appointment. You talked before about this was going on during the pandemic and his pediatrician with the hazmat, and rightfully so concerned about COVID, especially in that early time. But how do you think that Trevor's symptoms and pre-diagnosis occurring during the pandemic sort of was that another obstacle? And if so, how challenging was it navigating this really serious thing of figuring out what's wrong with your son, and also balancing that with the access to medical care was a little bit different during the pandemic.
Very different, very difficult. Just getting an appointment and getting to see a doctor in person was very challenging during this time. I remember just sitting on the phone with wait times forever, trying to speak to a nurse just to get an appointment with the doctor.
Do you feel like it delayed his access to a diagnosis?
Absolutely, it had to have, because I know that we would have gotten to some of where I needed to be in terms of getting the answers from the first doctor or no answers, to getting to that, searching for that second specialist quicker. So yes, it was incredibly challenging time. Healthcare for emotionally everything.
Yeah.
And also wondering whether maybe it was COVID. We didn't know. It was just
COVID or even post-COVID, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've heard several kids who have had sort of this post-COVID autoimmune type symptoms. But anyways, that's for another episode. Let's talk about that first GI visit. Was that in person or was it a telehealth?
It was in person, yeah.
Okay, and how did that go?
It was great. Again, I didn't go to that appointment, but my husband Kevin took Trevor to that appointment. It was in person. She was wonderful. Met with Trevor, said we were going to get to the bottom of it, figure it out. She actually dismissed the idea that it was Crohn's, but wanted to run every single test available to figure out what it was. We thought at the time it could be celiac disease because that kind of mimics the same symptoms.
Yeah.
Maybe IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, which is different than Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is in the camp of what's called inflammatory bowel disease, which there are two kinds, Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. So she ran a stool sample and ran all of his labs again. And the stool sample, which came back 2 days later, was the most alarming thing because there was blood in his stool. And I remember opening up those lab results and being terrified, thinking we had to rush him to the emergency room.
And you didn't know there was blood, and he couldn't see it, or you couldn't see it?
We could not see it in the stool. Yeah. So,
but the labs
maybe my mind really didn't know what to look for. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point to raise, just because sometimes those labs show things that the naked eye can't see. And so that's why it is so important. Obviously it's alarming if you see blood in stool or urine for yourself or your kids or anyone. But that's why those labs, I think, are so important, because they do show that.
I know that the blood that comes from the gut, from what I've learned, is is darker rather than red blood, which we've also seen in some of his later journey. But I remember messaging her, and she asked for my phone number, called me immediately. It was at 7:30 at night, and told me everything was going to be okay, and they were going to get him in the next week for a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, which are the two kind of seminal tests that they do to determine what's going on in somebody's GI system. And within 2 weeks, we were in a procedure for that. Obviously, COVID did delay some of that as well.
Yeah.
Because in order to get a colonoscopy at that time, you had to go get a COVID test and be cleared for that. And they were only doing them intermittently. They weren't doing them as regularly as they are now.
And do you have to be asleep for those procedures too?
And he had to be asleep. And he was just so thin and frail.
And
at the time.
Scared probably too, right?
So scared and pale, and just remember having to have him not eat again. And eating was was hard for him during that time. I remember him feeling so sick after he was, eat in his stomach. So he was very picky with his food in terms of what he was eating. But then having to clear out his system for the colonoscopy was even more stressful.
Oh my gosh.
So that was 2 weeks later in terms of the colonoscopy. And that's when we got the, they did, biopsies at that time, but that's when they gave us the diagnosis.
Of Crohn's disease.
Of Crohn's disease, yeah.
And what went through your mind when you first heard, first of all, did your doctor call you and tell you, okay, we have an answer, it's Crohn's disease?
Yeah, immediately after the colonoscopy, they have an idea of what it was. So they gave us the diagnosis then, but they obviously couldn't confirm it until the biopsies came in, which was a week later. So that just confirmed what they had originally told us. But I remember her and her colleague coming down to the waiting room where Kevin and I had been sitting and waiting for Trevor as he was waking up from the anesthesia and telling us what it was and what their plan of attack was going to be.
And how relieved were you? How terrified were you? Both? What was going through your mind at that time?
Actually, a sense of relief because we had an answer. And I knew a lot of, I had done some research on Crohn's at that time, and I knew there were millions of people living with the disease and living normal lives. And so at the time, I really felt relief. Of course, I was scared, but it was more of a sense of relief and knowing that we were going to now be able to fix it. That was how I felt.
Okay. And what did that look like? So at that time, you had an answer. What was did right away, did you get sort of a plan of action from his doctor? Or, how did that work?
So the main treatments with people with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, because it's an autoimmune disease and it's basically your immune system is attacking your gut, similar to arthritis or plaque psoriasis. It's just another form of an autoimmune disease. So they wanted to immediately put him on a biologic, and a biologic is an immunosuppressant, which is basically a medicine that's suppressing a portion of the immune system that was attacking his gut. And they wanted to put him on Remicade, which was the kind of the gold standard for pediatric patients with Crohn's disease. And it's via infusion every 4 to 8 weeks. He ended up being on a 4-week schedule. And I said, okay, absolutely. We had full and complete trust of our doctor at that point. And she had told us he was going to start to feel better. At that point, he had already began steroids because he was in such a bad state by the time he had the colonoscopy. He needed to gain weight. He needed to start to feel better. So he was on prednisone for a bit and that immediately made him feel better at that point.
Were you and Kevin both on board with starting the Remicade treatment?
We were.
Yeah. Good. That's good. And what did that look like? You said it's an infusion and it goes to the doctor's office, or how does that get administered?
We go to the hospital. We went to UCLA, Mattel Children's Hospital. They have a pediatric infusion center there. And we would go there and he would get set up, and amazing nurses there who became our family because we would be there so much. They just took such good care of him. They knew him so well. They knew his veins. He was a hard stick. That was a whole another issue. And he had 3 induction doses. I think there were 2, 4, and 6 weeks apart. And after that, they begin to determine how often he needs the medication. And for kids, most kids do need it at a 4 to 5 week schedule rather than an 8-week schedule.
Okay.
Because kids tend to have a more severe Crohn's rather than somebody who might be diagnosed later in life.
I was going to actually ask you is how unusual is it for kids as young as 10 to be diagnosed versus an adult?
It's not the norm. Most people with Crohn's, from my understanding, get diagnosed anywhere between 15 and 35.
Okay.
So he was young, which is also something why it never crossed my mind. Why would a 10-year-old have Crohn's? We don't have Crohn's disease. Nobody has any sort of autoimmune disease in our family. So it just never crossed my mind. So it was unusual, but are so many kids that have it.
Yeah.
From what we've learned. More and more are getting diagnosed each day. I think it's because we know more about it and we're able to diagnose it earlier.
Yeah.
There's a lot of theories about why kids might be getting it younger, maybe things with our environment, the things we eat.
Let's talk about the infusion. So, like, what does that look like? He goes to the hospital, like you said. Like, how long is it? Like, what does that look like?
So he would have to miss school when he had an infusion because he would have to take Benadryl with the infusion, which would kind of put him out for the infusion.
Yeah.
The infusions were about 3.5 hours long.
Wow, he's sitting there for 3.5 hours. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
so they give him a nice comfy chair. He relaxes. He brought a blanket. He brought his iPad.
Okay.
School obviously knew what we were doing at the time, completely knew what was going on, and they accommodated him. So yeah, we would make a day of it, and we would actually try to make a fun day out of it. So we would, Trevor became obsessed with the scrambled eggs at UCLA hospital cafeteria. And anybody who knows the UCLA eggs will be like, I think they're powdered eggs. I mean, they're just, but he loved them. So he looked forward to having breakfast there every single time. So we would get there early, we would get his breakfast, we'd bring it up to the infusion center, and we'd hang out, and I'd read a book, and he would watch a movie, and eventually he fell asleep after 30 minutes, and he slept through the whole thing. And we were driving home at the end of the day.
Okay.
So,
and just for the listeners, the drive to UCLA from your home is, depending on the traffic, it could be 45 minutes or it could be an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, we would always take the first appointment of the day at 7:30 just to get through traffic. So getting there was easy, and coming back would usually take longer.
Yeah.
He later transitioned to rapid infusions. So the infusions shortened a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So how long was he sort of, like, for what time period was he on this sort of every 4 or 5 weeks going to UCLA for the 3.5 hour infusion?
For about 4 to 5 years until he switched just this year to his new medication.
So for 4 to 5 years, you've been doing that?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, before we talk about the switch, how did you guys manage as a family, sort of first that monthly, you took off work, your husband took off work for the day. How did you guys manage that? You also have a younger daughter. How did that work?
It was a lot. It was a lot of juggling and managing, and I would obviously, we would switch off taking him because it was once a month. So it was difficult work-wise for both of us. And we had to attend to Aubrey, our other daughter. But yeah, we would make it work, and this infusion he had other doctor's appointments as well, in addition to the infusions.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what other members of his medical team, in addition to the GI doctor, did he have or does he have now?
So he has a whole team of people that oversee him. UCLA has since opened up a pediatric IBD center.
Oh, wow.
So he's transitioned now from Dr. Pathak who's still part of his team, but to Dr. Hamandi, who's a pediatric IBD specialist. He has a rheumatologist who we see in Santa Monica. He has a dietitian who checks in with him regularly. He's soon going to have a psychologist who's joining the IBD team. We're meeting with her in a couple weeks. That's something that we've been asking for some time.
Yeah. I was going to, any other doctors before I follow up
and
on
just
that?
nurses, and obviously seeing our primary doctor, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and acupuncturist. through UCLA as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the emotional toll. Obviously, there's a substantial physical toll, not just, managing the day-to-day, which actually I'm going to get to in a second. But like that, the physical toll, the day-to-day toll of dealing with, what comes up with the illness, but the emotional toll is a significant one. And so I'm glad to hear that a psychologist is coming on to your team. But can you talk a little bit about that, on him, about him, either in the early days or, now? What did that look like for him?
So it's interesting because, when we were given the diagnosis of Crohn's for Trevor, I don't have to tell you because having a child with an illness, it's as if you're getting the diagnosis as a parent. So I felt like I was getting that diagnosis that day. So he was 10 at the time, and I felt that he didn't quite understand it. So I was absorbing everything. And the emotional toll was actually more difficult for me at that time, which caused me to seek a therapist out for me during that time. So it has since shifted as he's gotten older and he's navigating becoming a teenager and a young man, where it is taking a psychological toll from him now. And so when I found that I needed to talk to somebody about what I was going through at the time, because it was so devastating, I remember going to my office in the time of not knowing, even knowing at the time what he had. I would come to my office, kind of break down and start crying in my office with the closed doors shut. Because it was just so much, not knowing what his, even though we had answers, he was still going to have this chronic condition for his entire life. And I wanted him to have a normal life, as any parent does, so it was just, I talked to somebody during that time, which was very helpful. But what I found that I needed most, and what I gave feedback in terms of UCLA and why we want a psychologist for him now, is that I really want somebody who understands his disease. Because trying to explain to somebody in the mental health professional field what this disease is, what you're going through, what he's navigating, it can be very isolating.
Yes.
So that I want somebody who understands it, because he really is a happy kid.
He is, yeah.
He knows how to regulate his emotions. He knows all of that. It's just finding the coping mechanisms of how to navigate his life, knowing that at any moment he can have a flare. He can be in the bathroom. He needs to know where all the bathrooms are in everywhere he goes. He needs to carry his emergency meds with him everywhere. It's just such unique issues. And so that's what we're excited to have for Trevor. And for my personal journey, I'm excited to meet this person and kind of maybe utilize this person myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, let's be honest. We both have 15-year-old boys, and we both were 15-year-olds many years ago. So we know that it's not the easiest time under the best of circumstances. So adding in a chronic illness that literally impacts you on a daily basis is hugely unsettling, and potentially very embarrassing, especially during this time when it's such a delicate time for teens to be living, and more so now with all the social media stuff. So I'm excited for you that you have a psychologist coming on board. I want to get back to your therapy journey, but I don't want to forget to ask you this question. You touched upon the day-to-day challenges. So the treatment in theory is supposed to, what am I trying to say? Sort of keep the flare-ups and all of that at bay, but it's not, it sounds like it's not perfect. Can you touch upon that?
Yeah. Well, it's not a cure, right? There's no cure for Crohn's right now. We're hoping maybe in his lifetime. I know they're close to finding a cure, but it's supposed to put him in remission, which is basically full healing within his gut and no symptoms. There's different types of remission. But it isn't perfect. No, he can have days where he's still fatigued. Fatigue is a common symptom of it. He can have days where he's rushing to the bathroom and having urgency. He just has off days. His joints hurt quite a bit. I know he has a lot of back problems. So every day is different. My husband continues to remind me that we need to appreciate the good days because you don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. But we've learned to manage it. But it's always a sense of my guard is never down. And I hate that feeling. It's always in the back of my mind. Every time I get a notice from my chart that his labs are in, the newest labs, my heart skips a beat, wondering, how I'm going to feel when I open it. We know that it can change at any moment, and it did for us. For a while, I thought he was going to be good for life on this one medication. And we had such a good stretch where he was great.
Let's talk about that change, because you mentioned that he recently switched treatment. So let's talk about that next.
So we had some idea that his medication was kind of stopping. It wasn't working as well. And this is a very common thing with medications with inflammatory bowel disease, is that the way his Dr. Hamandi explained it is, sometimes you're taking the 405 and, sometimes there'll be traffic and you have to find another way to get to your location. You just don't know why these medications stop working. You always hope that they'll stay. So that's exactly what happened. He went through puberty. We saw that his iron was starting to dip on his labs, and that's usually a first sign that something's not right. He went in for a colonoscopy with Dr. Pathak at the time, and she saw, some mild inflammation coming back because we had the repeat colonoscopy after a year on Remicade, and he looked perfect. So we could see that it was starting to come back, and that's when we were kind of transitioning with Dr. Hamandi, who had just come on, and we knew that if things were going the way they were going, we were going to have to switch medications. We tried to stay on Remicade. We added medications like methotrexate, which made Trevor incredibly nauseous, and he can't. I can't even say the word around him because it makes him nauseous. It was a very difficult time being on that med, but we couldn't save it, and so we knew it was time to change meds. It happened pretty drastically, but I can talk about that now if you want.
And just like for the listeners, this was also during his first year of high school, which made this extra challenging. Let's talk about that. And just let's talk about what the new how you landed on the new medication. And then I'm also curious if once you're off Remicade, is it the kind of thing where you can't ever go back?
So Dr. Hamandi wanted to transition Trevor to Skyrizi. It's a new medication out there, and I know everybody's heard it. There's so many commercials.
A lot of commercials, yeah. I know, I've heard it.
They use it for many different autoimmune conditions, but it's a different medication than Remicade. It hits a different pathway in the gut because the pathway that Remicade was hitting was no longer responsive to that. So it's a different line of medications. I think Tremfya is in the same line. There's also Entyvio. There's so many new medications out there, which gives me a lot of hope for the future of the research in the disease. But we had tried to switch him to Skyrizi, but we were having issues with insurance. Insurance was denying it because it was, at the time, it's right now, it's still, I think, 18 or over. I think they're going to approve it for pediatrics soon. But
is that because there aren't enough clinical trials in it, or
I'm not quite sure why. I don't want to answer it incorrectly, but they are close to approving it, I think, for peds. But at the time, they weren't. And so we were getting a lot of no, until one day he hit the flare, and he was in immediate pain, like back to pre-diagnosis, and couldn't go to school. In the bathroom 12, 13 times a day. And so Dr. Hamandi said, you know what, we're going to admit him. Let's admit him to the hospital and get him his first dose that way. And so that's what we did. And he got his first dose in the hospital. And then we got approval from insurance. That's a whole nother podcast, dealing with insurance companies.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one if we have time, or maybe next episode. But how soon did he feel relief after the first dose of Skyrizi?
It took some time. With Remicade, it was immediate. And that's the way Remicade works. Skyrizi took a good 2.5 months to start working. And that was very, very difficult. So getting back into that period of time where he was not feeling well at all, and now being a 15-year-old teenager, I think he was 14, turning 15, navigating his second semester at a very challenging academic school, also balancing all of his hobbies that he loves to do. He's on the speech and debate team, which he's so passionate about. He was traveling by himself with his team, doing different things. He was on steroids for this bridging medication, but he had an awful experience on it. It was making him very moody. He was gaining weight. He wasn't sleeping because that's what prednisone does. And so when it finally started working, because we were kind of wondering, is this medicine going to work? It was a relief.
Yeah. And how long has it been that he's been on Skyrizi?
He's been on it since February. He's got no abdominal pain now. He feels amazing. It's amazing. He did the 3 IV loading doses in the hospital. And now the maintenance doses are an injectable kind of pod that he puts in his leg every 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So he's had his first injection. He's going to have a second injection in a couple weeks. So lifestyle-wise, it's going to be a game changer for Trevor because we're not going to have to go to the hospital.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. So no more infusion time, day off to take him to UCLA?
Which had its,
No more eggs, though?
Huh? No more eggs, right? He's upset about that. And we're also sad because we had connected so much with our infusion family.
Sure.
So,
but it sounds like you'll still, with all your other medical appointments.
We see them all the time.
Yeah.
Because exactly.
Okay. All right. So that's a bright side.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, let's change gears a little bit. I was so happy to join you on the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation Take Steps walk this year. I'm so happy that you found that community. How did it come about that you connected with them? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So during the period of when Trevor was on Remicade, feeling good, having off days here and there, but still feeling good and still learning about it. I think we were a couple years in. I really was I was desperate for community. I was really desperate to know other people that had children with this disease. I was desperate to meet other parents I could lean on, who I could share my experiences with and get their feedback. I was desperate for Trevor to meet other kids like him. So I found the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, the Los Angeles Orange County chapter. I set up a Zoom meeting with the directors of the volunteer coordinators there, Skylar and Vanessa. And just because I wanted to try to turn this very dooming bad diagnosis into something positive that we could kind of turn around and kind of make something good out of it, whatever we could. I don't know what I was looking for at the time, but I knew I was desperate for something. And so I met them. They were amazing. They were so welcoming. They understood, even though they were 2 patients, they're young and they were kids themselves that had Crohn's disease. And so they knew exactly what I was feeling and going through. And we started, they talked about how their Take Steps walk is their biggest fundraiser of the year. It's a walk. It brings the communities together. They have a walk in Los Angeles and a walk in Orange County, and you raise money to help fund research, treatment, cures, and you meet other people in the community. And so we started volunteering with them for that. And Trevor has since now taken a role on their Teen Leadership Youth Committee.
Oh, great.
It's called the Crohn's and Colitis Teens Leadership Youth Committee. It's a bunch of teens in high school who also have Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And they meet once a month on Zoom.
Oh, wow.
And they do volunteer activities. They're going to be volunteering at the gala. I think it's at Paramount Studios in October for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation as well.
Very nice. I'm so glad that he's able to connect with other teens with Crohn's. What about you, though? How have you connected with other parents to sort of help you feel less alone in this journey?
So I've met some parents. There's a parent support group through the foundation. I have parents through that. I've met this wonderful woman who lives near me, also who suffers from Crohn's disease, and amazing woman, Barry. And I remember when Trevor was diagnosed, feeling how much I wished I had somebody to talk to just to know what the future might look like. So when I hear in the community at our school or of other kids getting diagnosed with Crohn's, and they're sparse, but I do hear about it because the more people that know about my journey and Trevor's, I have parents saying, you should talk to Jen, you should. And so I have connected with some parents who are getting the diagnosis early on. And I've reached out to them without even knowing, and we've become good friends, just telling them, hey, listen, you may not want to talk to me now, but I'm here for you. And I just want you to know that I needed somebody in the beginning, and they always call me back. And that really, really, I know gives them solace. It helps me too, just to kind of share, hey, listen, it's going to be okay. It's going to get better. And that's all I wanted to hear in the beginning, was that it was going to get better.
Yeah, it's so important. When you're in those early stages, I think it's so important to hear from other parents who have been through that journey that, like, number one, you're not walking alone, right? Like, you're
Absolutely.
not, it's as horrible as it feels, like, you're not walking alone. And number two, it is going to be okay that, you do come out on the other side, not the same,
No.
but okay. And so, of course, I'm getting teary-eyed for those of you that can't see me. But yeah, it is so important. What drives you to sort of connect with new parents, newly diagnosed parents in that way?
I just know what a dark place it is in the beginning, because I was there. It's not, and I'm not perfect now. I have such dark days again, knowing, with our journey. But it feels good, like you said, to know that you're not alone. It feels very lonely and isolating in the beginning. Why did my kid? Why is it mine? It's hard to feel. I used to get angry when I would see other kids running around the football field, or baseball field, and not having to think about the things that Trevor has to think about. Like, am I going to make it through the baseball game without having to go to the bathroom? What am I going to do if I get a ping of pain on second base? What kind of food are they going to serve at this birthday party? Am I able to eat it? I mean, I just want other parents to know that, there's support and there's other people out there. It doesn't have to be, seeking a therapist, but I often think that people who have walked it with you are probably the best people to provide support.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, like, going back to the new medication and how that affects, just so that people understand. Um, so the medication has put him in remission again, right?
Yes.
But he still has.
Well, we think, yes. But I mean, they can't confirm remission until they go in and do a colonoscopy, but his symptoms are gone.
Okay, so great. I mean, that's good for him, obviously, not necessarily for you emotionally, like, because, it's never ending with no cure in sight, but good treatment options. What is that like? Does he still, in terms of like his diet, is he still have to, there's certain foods he has to avoid, or does the remission allow him to sort of eat without limiting certain foods?
He, dietary restrictions, he pretty much eats everything, but he does avoid fried foods and heavily processed foods, that stuff, and fast food. That does tend to aggravate his gut.
Okay.
So he knows that from his own experience with it. So we've kind of changed the oils we use in our food. We eat a lot more whole foods. He really can't eat at school. He does in an emergency, so I send him with safe foods at school. He has his little medicine box that he takes just in case he needs, a Tylenol or a cramping pill or something. But yeah, he's really had to be cognizant of his body and his health. His doctor kind of sat him down at the last couple doctor's appointments and kind of laid it out like, hey, listen, now that you're coming into adulthood, it's time you need to learn how to advocate for yourself. If you're not with mom and you're at a tournament in San Francisco and you need to go to the ER, you need to be able to explain to the doctors what's happening to you and what your disease is. So you need to know the name of your disease, all the medications you're on. You need to be able to explain it. And this is what we're kind of transitioning now. They have an incredible transition, pediatric to adult. And this is part of it, is learning all of that.
Yes, that's UCLA's center does that. Oh, that's so fantastic. I hate that even exists, but because Crohn's isn't going away, I love that is such a valuable resource for Trevor and others like him, and for really the whole family.
And listen, I'm his mom. I'm probably still going to always be his proxy and look at his labs before he ever does. But
yeah, but no, even just like with the bathroom stuff, like, you know, he has to constantly be aware of, if something's going on, he has to recognize like, okay, is this just a normal thing or is it something more? And when do I need to get in touch with you or someone else?
And he's gotten really good at that.
It's so fantastic. You talked about this a little bit, but for another parent who just got a diagnosis, that's so great that you reach out to them. It's so great that you let them know that they may not, want to talk with you now, but letting them know that you're available and that they do call you later. But what other advice to give them? What do you wish someone had said to you? Like, did you have someone like that reached out to you? And if so, what did they say? Or if not, what do you wish they had said to you?
Mm-hmm. I talked to a lot of people in the beginning and about what was going on in our life. And randomly I had somebody say, you know what, a friend of mine back east, their son has Crohn's. And so I asked for their phone number because I didn't have anybody reaching out to me. There weren't enough people, I think, out there who knew about it. At least I didn't know them. And so I remember calling this person who lived in New York, this mom, not knowing her. We had a mutual friend, and her telling me, she's like, okay, what was his numbers here? What was his? She understood it all. And that was so like cool to have somebody who understood it, and her son was thriving, doing well. I know he was on Humira, another medication.
Okay.
And she I remember telling me, she's like, I know you feel like it's going to be hopeless right now. I know the way you feel right now. I promise you will have a moment where it will get better. And it did. And I had to remind myself of that during our last little stint just a few months ago when I felt like we were back to square one. This time we had the right doctors telling us it's going to be better. It's going to be okay. I can't tell you that for sure, but I promise you it will. And we had that this time because I knew we were in amazing hands. So that's the thing I want to tell new parents who don't know what's wrong with their kids. And I hear about them and my kids losing weight, or they're sleeping too much, or they have diarrhea all the time, or, advocate, find out the answers, and don't isolate yourself. There are a lot of people who just want to keep it a secret. And I think that's a common thing. I think Trevor's still dealing with that and grappling with that as a teen, is who is he comfortable enough to tell, because it is such an embarrassing disease.
Yes.
So,
and it shouldn't be, but yes.
It shouldn't be. But so learning how to be vocal about it, being on this teen leadership committee, he also reached out to the city of Los Angeles and got a proclamation for World IBD Day through Councilmember Blumenfeld. So
Good for him.
He's just learning how to be proud of it because he has experiences that some kids, most kids will never have.
Yeah, that's for sure. Lemonade isn't always sweet. Sometimes it's sour. Sometimes it has a little too much pulp in it. What's the lemonade in your story? What have you and your family learned in this journey that you just didn't expect?
That we're stronger than we thought. That it's a never-ending journey to appreciate the days that are great, the days that he feels amazing, to remind him that he now has qualities that have made him more empathetic, more stronger, more unique. I think he's become a kinder person. I'd like to think he was going to be all these things before, but I know that this disease has changed him emotionally, mentally, psychologically for the better. I do believe that. And I'm hoping that he continues to use his platform, having it to help others.
I love that. And I will add, he was always a sweet boy, but I'm not going to disagree with you on what he's learned in this journey. Last question is, what do you want people to know who don't have someone with Crohn's in their life, what it's like to be on this journey?
Well, it is an invisible disease. And so what I tell Trevor a lot is you never know what somebody else is going through. So on the outside, he looks healthy. And all the kids that he goes to school with, many of them who don't know that he has Crohn's, think he's happy and healthy and they have no idea. And that just reminds me, you don't know what somebody else's battles are, even though they might look fine on the outside, whatever it may be.
Great. Yeah, that's great advice. Great sage advice. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Trevor's story is a journey. Your family's story is a journey. I hope that you'll come back, give us an update. I hope that the medication works the way it's supposed to for many, many years to come. But it is a journey, and I hope that you'll come back again. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Curveballs and Lemonade. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss a news story. New episodes drop every Thursday. Follow us on Instagram at Curveballs and Lemonade and on Facebook. For audio listeners, make sure to check out full video episodes on YouTube at Curveballs and Lemonade. Engineered by Robert Altschuler, Curveballs and Lemonade is produced by Command Creative Studios.